retail is having a major impact on the retail experience, with small entrepreneurs and big brands alike using pop-up strategies to engage customers with creative merchandising and outside of the box thinking. Though it is not a new trend, prior to the pandemic, pop-up shops were popping up all over. Whether you hear temporary retail, rogue retailing, flash retailing, pop-up store, or pop-up shop, it's all one and the same, and temporary retail space that sells merchandise of any kind. For just about every consumer product that has been sold via a pop-up shop at one point in time, from art to fashion to tech gadgets and food, pop-up stores are exciting because they create short-term stories that are as creative as they are engaging, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Big name brands have tested out pop-up concepts as well as local artists, makers, and fashion designers, and we've all become increasingly popular in the pop-up scene. Even mobile food trucks, fashion design houses, and vintage pop-up stores have spotted popping up all over large cities and small. There are many benefits to a pop-up shop, like engaging customers offline and connecting with them personally in order to build stronger relationships, creating more opportunities, and to sell, as most purchases still happen offline today. Pop-ups will help to build awareness as consumers and the media love the excitement generated by pop-up shops and pop-up events. And lastly, launching a pop-up shop is typically much cheaper than launching a traditional retail store. In fact, one of the topics we will be able to touch on today is the experience of having a bricks and mortar location throughout the pandemic and how that's been. Many of our students in the audience today will soon be a part of their first pop-up experience through the Fashion Marketing and Management program. It's our immense pleasure as Leap Junction to bring you a panel of amazing local retail entrepreneurs who can offer their insights and experiences with popping up. I'd now like to pass things off back to our panel moderator for the day, Debbie Trotashad, who will introduce you to our entrepreneurs who are joining us for the discussion today. Oh, Debbie, you're just on mute there if you want to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I was just emailing Roxy, so hopefully she'll be on. So thank you everybody for coming. I appreciate it so much. I know, you know, it's a bit of a strange time that we're doing this virtually, but hopefully it will go well. And the students really appreciate you taking the time to come and speak with them. And so Roxana's not on yet, so I'm going to start with introductions. So Johnson of Moody & Co. Johnson, if you can wave to everybody. He's one of our panelists, a graduate from Fanshawe as well, and he'll tell you a little bit about himself. If you'd like to do that now, that would be great, Johnson.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I graduated from Fanshawe in graphic design and advertising, and I've been doing Mood & Co for just under 4 years. And yeah, it's quite the time that we're in right now. A lot of change and uncertainty, but a big pivot for a lot of small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and big corporations as well. So yeah, it's been quite the challenge the past 6-7 months, but it's just something to kind of pivot now at this point. We have to adapt to the new normal. This is kind of, this is where it's at, and you either find a way or you shut down.
Great. And so Johnson's merchandise consists of, do you want to talk a little bit about the merchandise that you create?
Yeah, so we do mainly candles. We've got car fresheners, detergent, working on like sweatsuits and stuff like that. But our main focus is candles.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. And how many years have you been in business now?
4.
4. Awesome. Fantastic. Candles are fun. And I know most of the panelists know who he is, and everybody I think owns one of his or has purchased one of his candles. They're fun. The Netflix night one, I like that one. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Erica? Hi, Erica. You want to introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about you and your business?
Sure. My name's Erica Oakes, and actually used to work at Fanshawe in Leap Junction. I guess it feels like a long time ago now, probably over 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
But I actually started my business when I was working at Leap Junction. So I started a children's clothing company. I started primarily with children's clothing, all made in Canada. We use a sustainably sourced bamboo fabric. And I wanted to start this simply because I wanted to know, you know, as a mom, you kind of care so much about what you're putting your kids in. And I wanted to know where their clothing was coming from and how it was made and who was making it. And so, yeah, so I started the business with my brother then, and we're in our 4th year of operation. We started online, and then a year ago opened up a retail location in Old East Village. Yeah, I'm a mom of 2 boys. They keep me really busy. And I think that's pretty much it. We'll get into more, I'm sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Jen Lofthouse of Lofthouse Living. Hi, Jen.
Hi. So I had to shop Lofthouse Living, and we opened it maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I'm really bad with dates. And we started off as brick and mortar. And then as of this pandemic, we've really gone online quite a bit. And as of last year, we moved our shop to be within the clothing store, Saffron Road. So in a way, it's kind of like a permanent pop-up shop inside their store. So it still gives us that brick and mortar feel. People can come smell a candle or touch a pillow, that kind of thing. But we're primarily online. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, I want to spin it as. And yeah, we sell a little bit of everything. We do things in a really neutral color palette. And yeah, that's kind of it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then Catherine and Tracy, Cambridge, they of Impressions 148. If you could tell everybody a little bit about yourself and the business.
Hi guys, I'm Catherine. This is my mom Tracy, and we just recently purchased Impressions. And now we're kind of doing a little, I guess, revamp. Now we're Impressions 148. Yeah, we're a women's clothing store generally and sell some accessories and a little bit of home deck stuff. And yeah, we've been doing this for what, 2 months?
2 months.
So,
because we're crazy.
Yeah, why not? So yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Jennifer, do you want me to continue on?
Yep, that would be great.
Yeah, okay, great. So I guess the question I want to ask to everybody, so we've kind of touched on what you do and your products and merchandise that you carry and how many years you've been in business. You know, when I initially started this pop-up talks, I don't know, 4 years ago, it was about the pop-up shops, right? Because in the past with event planning, we always did a fashion show. And I sort of transitioned from the fashion show into doing a pop-up event for event planning because I think it's relevant and students really should learn how to do this. And then the other component was Goodwill, because we've partnered with Goodwill for many years in doing, you know, our fashion shows and secondhand clothing. And so they're a huge, you know, a partner in our event. And so the sustainability thing, you know, in terms of shopping secondhand, I mean, the demographic that we teach does that anyways now. It's become a huge thing. So I guess, you know, in terms of the pop-up, right, I think most of you have done something like that. So my first question is, you know, what are we doing now? Because the pop-up shop in, you know, festivals or other events, you know, having those large gatherings, we can't do. Our students are going to do an online event. So I would like each of you to sort of speak to, either, how the business has been affected by this pandemic, by COVID, as a small retailer, right? And you've had to all adapt and change what you're doing. And for Catherine and Tracy, starting a new business in this pandemic. So if we could just sort of touch on that, that would be great. And maybe Jen, we'll start with you. Your online presence, Jen, is really great. So that's, I think, something that, you're savvy at, right? So.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I would have to say with the pandemic, it feels super insensitive to say this, but we are one of the rare success stories of it, in which being built online and ready to go for online sales, we were able to really branch and offer local delivery and all the stuff when we went into shutdown. And so I worked with Saffron Road, who was an opposite scenario, in which they're just brick and mortar. They didn't have an online store, so they weren't ready to go. And so we've, switched that around, and they're able to sell online now. But I have to say it was a huge advantage to have everything listed online and ready to go. And I kind of forget what the question is. Sorry, I'm just rambling.
So really, I'll just simplify it. So the pandemic. So,
yeah.
I guess, because you would do pop-ups before. You've done them, and you've had people in your store and do them. And so are you still doing that? And how the pandemic has affected the business? So you've moved more and more online, right? Like, and your social media platform, and all of that, right? So
yeah, so I would have to say in-person things, events and stuff like that have really come to a halt when it comes to face-to-face, unfortunately. And so, yeah, I haven't joined any of these online pop-ups yet. I've just been kind of spinning what we have and just trying to get it out there. But I am kind of curious to see how that's going to work. We are teaming up with a few people at Christmas time to do online markets. And so I think it's going to be a new way of spinning some excitement and, trying to get creative with how to lure customers to come and shop with you on that weekend specifically. So yeah, we'll see.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Erica, do you want to go next?
Sure. I was in a very similar situation to Jen. So we had just opened up. We were actually coming up to our year anniversary of our retail location when we had to shut down. So I had operated online and had all of the online, actually we share inventory with our online store and our retail location. So it was an easier transition for us. However, I think especially expectations of customers, I know Jen did, like you go above and beyond with your local delivery. Like she's like at your door with your item the next day. And we just had the quantities of orders that we weren't able to do that. So we shipped through Canada Post, and that was a big, like sour spot for some people. They wanted me to deliver their items to their door the next day. And I didn't have the staffing capacity. And I think the capacity of my staff already was the anxiety that was there. And we were just, getting through the orders online when we could. So I think that was a challenge for us when shifting to online sales, was managing the expectations of our customers in that regard. But we had it's been a really positive experience in terms of the support in the community for our store. I feel like people kind of came out of the woodworks and shopped with us. And if they were like borderline shopping with us before, they just jumped in and shopped and supported. And that has been amazing. We also, we tried to do some community campaigns to give back to frontline workers. We work with our production team in Toronto to make masks out of recycled scrap fabrics. So we tried to stay and kind of pivot our business so that we were still servicing the community in a way that felt right. And yeah, I think And now that we're opened again, I feel like people have found us online that didn't necessarily know about us before through social media and through those campaigns. So we've actually had a lot of first-time customers into our retail location now that actually found us through the pandemic. So that's been really positive.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Thank you. That was awesome. Catherine and Tracy, do you want to talk? So I don't know that you've done pop-ups, but I mean, Tracy has she's a wealth of knowledge and history in terms of retail and seen the change, but opening during a pandemic, right?
I think Catherine was working for the previous owner of Impressions, and they too didn't have a big online presence. It does really change everything when the product you're selling is clothing, because especially women's clothing, where it's like it has to fit, it has to be on the body. So they were finding that the online is a more difficult format. However, they were doing a lot of things like video, Instagram. Catherine would drive products to somebody's house, sit in the driveway with, here's like 2 sizes bumping each end, try it on, wait, bring it back to the store, whatever didn't work, and process it. So it still becomes like,
it was a grind.
It's a grind, and it's like a very hands-on experience. Like that's the nature of clothing, right? That I think that adds a dimension that is harder than other products. I know Zappos with shoes, for instance, their return rate is like 60%. Like, that's, it's because a person wants to try it on and ship it. So it works for really big companies that have a depth of inventory, but it's hard for small boutiques.
Well, especially with, clothing, where it has to fit perfectly, feel good, right?
Yeah.
And you want it to fit, and you're, it's not H&M where you have bulks and bulks of sizes and a warehouse and separate product. So that's a grind. And I think that people really love the boutique experience. They love the person, the interaction. And I think we forget so many people would go onto our online store, but then they want to call you and chat about it, or they want to DM you about it or whatever. And I think people forget that whole interaction is still the boutique experience. You're still doing that. And I think people really love that. So I think in a way things picked up a ton because people would keep coming back because they liked the experience. It was almost therapeutic, especially through the pandemic. But also, I think for us, especially with just clothing, it's kind of a good lesson, maintaining the online store, getting it all up together. We built it when we first closed. It's a grind, and it takes a lot of manpower and work. And so it was kind of, for me, being employed, helping somebody do that. It was a good kind of lesson and experience for if we have part 2 or ever have to go back to that maybe online isn't our thing.
Okay, great. And one more question about that in terms of your business. So it's been a couple months, but it's been doing fairly well.
Yeah,
yes.
It's been pretty good. I find now Instagram's played a huge role, and there is still a lot that I think that's been the biggest kind of eye-opener.
Okay.
It brings a lot of people into the store, and then also through sales, I feel we still do a lot through Instagram and kind of reaching people further, which has kind of been nice for me to find out too, that you might not need an online store per se, or you could have a small one, but a lot is generated through Instagram and just through DMs, it seems.
Okay. Awesome.
But yeah.
Basically, it all comes back to personal.
Yes.
Everybody wants a personal experience. That's why I think they go to small stores. They want to feel like they know Jen Lofthouse. So her social media is it's still personal, right? Your kids, your home, whatever it is. It's although it's reaching a much broader range, they feel like they're experiencing them with you personally, and I think that's really critical.
Yeah. And, it's a good point about the hands-on experience in terms of shopping, right? And I agree with that, right? So that was a really good point. Okay, great. Fantastic. Thank you. Moody, you want to go next? Talk a little bit about your business, how it's changed. I know you were involved in many pop-ups, especially with the Boho Night Market and Goodwill, and you know, how the change has affected that, what you're doing differently?
Yeah, so in the beginning of COVID, when this all kind of went down, my business model is I focus on pop-ups and collaborations. When pop-ups, when we're unable to do pop-ups, I'm just left with online. But I was able to reach out to a lot of people for collaborations online, and they were able to respond. And I was talking to people with much bigger influence, and they were able to reply. And we're still in the process of working on these collaborations, because there's so many in betweens now. I'm dealing with people who are their managers and stuff like that. So, and labels and the corporate side of things are taking a little bit longer. Everything's getting pushed back. And the other thing too was, you know, stores closed down. So a lot of times I'd go into a store. Erica would know this. I would go into a store and bring candles in, and I would look around. If they have no candles there, chances are I'm going to get some on their shelf. But since, you know, stores had to like close down for a bit, and their business model had to shift and change, that changed on my end too. So since then, I had to think of other ways and pivot and figure out what to do. And selling candles online is already a challenge of it on its own, even before COVID, before anything, because people need to smell it in order to really buy it. So, but that was a challenge that I knew when I started. But that was a challenge that I was willing to take. I'm also in the industry of staying inside. So COVID kind of like, it benefited in the sense of selling online. And so in the beginning of COVID, people were locked up inside, and I think it was around March, and it was still pretty cold out. Yeah, I was able to sell a lot more for maybe March, April, and then May kind of slowed down a little bit, because that's when people started like going outside and realized like, hey, we've been locked up inside in the winter all year pretty much, like for a while now. So now it's time to get out and just get fresh air. And then I started doing the mosquito repellent candles, citronella candles for the summer. And now we're about to head into the winter, and it doesn't look like things are opening back up. If anything, we're going back to, you know, the first wave, or second wave. So right now it's more of like planning ahead more than ever. So I'm getting ready to launch box subscription model, so that gives people an opportunity to have something to look forward to this winter, because I can't imagine not being able to go outside and enjoy the fresh air, or go to events in the winter. Now that, you know, COVID, there's not going to be much events in the winter, and we're going to have to find things to do and find some kind of outlet for creativity as well. So I'm doing the monthly box subscription. I was actually looking at retail before COVID too, but now that's going to be pushed back. And trying to figure out a way to build your own scent online. That's kind of the next project for Mood. And I believe that and the monthly subscription will be successful during the pandemic.
What's the monthly subscription? Can you explain that to everybody?
So the monthly subscription is where you'll get a box of candles. You can sign up for the 3 month, 6 months, or 12 months. And we're calling it Sunrise, Golden Hour, and Sunset. So those are like the three kind of monthly subscription, and you'll get candles. And with the 12 months, you know, that's quite the commitment. This is all going to be new to me. This is all going to be a project of big learning experience for sure. But I don't expect people to sign up for a 12 months right away. But if they do, this is where I think including other local products as a bonus product in these boxes as well. Throwing some of that in and being able to kind of promote other businesses and getting them into people's hands on a monthly basis. So that's the monthly subscription.
Great. And what about clothing? Like, I know you were designing some clothing. Is that still in the works, or?
Yeah. It's one of those projects where it's not at the forefront.
Right.
It's always going to be kind of brewing, just because, I'm not a clothing brand. It's more of it will complement the candles, right? So if you're going to be inside, I want you to be mood and comfy.
That's right. Like a sweatshirt, sweatpants with the candle, like that whole sort of package.
Yeah. And like during this time too, like last year, I was able to work with musicians on the soundtracks of the scents. So turning scents into sounds with musicians and artists.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a cool concept.
And it's another income avenue, right?
Yeah.
It's like Spotify pays. If you get your music out there, and it's just another thing to work on. It's an online presence, and chances are, like, people who are listening to music, they probably listen to it every day.
Yeah.
And I need music to kind of also complement the candles.
Right.
And it's crazy because now I'm learning about the music industry. Now I'm learning about the distribution of music and where to sign up, and all of that, where that gets funneled, and the analytics that comes from Spotify. You can see where your music is getting played, the gender, the age. So now I get to see the age group that's listening to this music, how I should promote the music. Like, I have a song that's out right now. It's released last month, and it's got about 30,000 plays on.
What is it?
It's just like a guitar. Just like
okay.
But
cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Anybody could do that. Anyone can do that for their brand.
Yeah, that is like a great concept. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That was good. So the next, on my list was like questions that we had asked in previous years, right? The advantages and disadvantages of doing pop-ups. So, I mean, we're not doing them right now, but the advantages and disadvantages of pop-ups, just so that the students know, for those that have done pop-ups, what that might be. If you can give them just like a little bit of feedback about that. Jen, do you want
to? So some advantages and disadvantages. I remember when we had our storefront, maybe 2 years ago, we would go to, we packed in a ton of pop-ups one summer. And I remember, like, I'm just a bit of like a hot mess. I am organized sometimes, but not always. And so I found for pop-ups, I would just like throw everything in my car, and I wouldn't think about what I was leaving at the store. And we're not a big enough store to have tons of quantities of things to be at a pop-up and at the store. So I remember, like, I would, strip the store bare of product, and then I would put it all at this pop-up. Meanwhile, it's on a Saturday when we get our most traffic. So, I just remember not really planning well with how I was distributing stock within 2 locations. So that, I guess that would be more of a, if you have a brick and mortar location. But even what Erica was saying with sharing online and in-store stuff, it's kind of, you have to just be on top of your stock. So I found that a little bit of a disadvantage if you're unorganized like me. But advantages is having like another place to show your stuff, a new market. Your neighbors are bringing in a whole different crowd than who you are going to bring in. And so you're also meeting like-minded people, like other brands that are popping up as well. So I love, that's how I met everyone on this panel, essentially. So there's so many advantages to it. So I will stop rambling now, and someone else can answer.
That was great. Thank you so much. Erica?
So I think we touched on this last year on this panel, and Johnson and I always talk about this and how different pop-ups can just generate different customers. So like I really do well. We have the Modern Mom Show here in London. I do really well at the Modern Mom Show. But then some people don't necessarily do as well there just because of the demographic potentially. So sometimes it's the inconsistency in knowing what pop-ups work for you and what ones don't. I, right before the pandemic happened, like the week before it was like declared a national, international global pandemic, I was popping up at the Hudson Bay in Toronto. I was part of an International Women's Day market there, and we were featured among, I think, about 6 other brands. I was so excited to be included in this. It's the busiest store in Canada. And we were set up there for 4 days. And again, like Jen said, like kind of just figuring out what stays at the store, what to bring. That was obviously a lot of work. And it was good. It was new. Again, I think pop-ups, you get to meet other vendors and other store owners, and that's almost the funnest part of them, is those connections. But of course, new customers, and reaching, new potential customers, showing them your product in person. But that week, the Hudson Bay was dead. And the employees were coming up to us and being like, oh my, we have never seen this store so quiet. And I think it was like the calm before the storm of the pandemic. Like everybody was knowing something was up, but so they weren't necessarily going to the mall, and, but it was just that. So I felt a little unlucky in the timing of that pop-up, but again, like you don't know the circumstances. So I think the unpredictability of having a pop-up and putting in time, like in money, staffing and product and all that can be a disadvantage sometimes, just because you don't know, like you can't predict what's going to happen all the time. But again, an advantage would be exactly what Jen said, is just the connections you make, getting to a new demographic, new customer base. For us, especially in Toronto, like our clothing is made right in Toronto. So, explaining that to customers is and for them to see it in person is a great advantage.
So that's great. Thanks. And then Moody?
Mm-hmm. The advantage and disadvantage of pop-ups. Yeah, I think similar to what the rest has been saying, but
same sort of thing, eh? So
it's like getting people in and like seeing them again and seeing old customers, seeing new customers, and just being able to talk about your product, and not even like selling it to them, but just being able to like share the information on what you've done, because a lot of times they kind of want to know that.
Yeah, and a lot of times they don't know your product, right? So it's an introduction to you and your product, right? Do you think, the experience, in terms of the pop-ups, I think everybody has sort of spoken to this, but like, it's a lot of work, right? So I want my students to know that it is a lot of work, right? And the preparation, like the time to prepare that, and the work involved in terms of, sorry, Roxy's messaging me. I'm sorry, you guys. And just looking at sort of in a nutshell, the time spent to prepare for a pop-up. How do you decide which ones you're going into? Scheduling, that sort of thing.
So yeah, when you set up for a pop-up, it's like, you have to like gather all the products, and chances are you're going to forget things when you arrive to the pop-up.
Right.
And then you're going to be borrowing stuff from people, setting it up, and you want to make it kind of look good. And that takes a lot of time to put together. And then when you finally do, you do your show, and it's hours, right, of standing, talking to customers, getting the money, giving them the change, and moving the customers, because you can't be spending 20 minutes talking to a person all the time. So right. You have a cycle going on, but you don't want to also come off rude or anything either. So there's an art to that you're going to have to kind of learn. That's like customer service. So you want to give them the best customer service in a good amount of time, so you can move on to the next person. And then by the time you're done, you got to grab a quick bite in between the show. You might be snacking along the way. And then it's teardown. Now it's packing it all up. And it's not going to look the same as when you brought it. It's going to look 100% different.
Yeah.
Things thrown in boxes, bins stacked up, throwing it into the car, and then you're gone. And then you have another show tomorrow or a show a day after. And that's going to be a different layout. And so in between all of that, it's like nonstop. And
nonstop.
Especially if, you hope that the show goes well so that you stay motivated. If the show is like kind of doesn't turn out the way it is, that can bring you down a little bit.
For sure. Yeah, I think we've all had that experience.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
And like I've only done one pop-up this year since
Where was that?
It was at Purdy. She had a little mini pop-up, and haven't done that in a long time. It was like new again. It was so much fun to doing a pop-up, getting to see people for once. But there's a little distance, and then like customers come in, they're not sure can I touch it? Am I too close? So now you got to navigate that.
Yeah.
So that's always going to be a thing, that's because you're dealing with different people who are going to approach it differently every single time. Some people might just come up and just, this looks nice, and just touch it and put it all on them, and then they pull it back, and then, or some people are just like, what's this? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a whole thing that's going on right now.
It's a different gig, right, for retail now.
Yeah.
So for all of you, this, and you can all sort of answer, you can turn your mics on and answer, but like, so I know, as far as the business is concerned, right? And do you think that we're going to see, what do you think the future has to bring in terms of retail? I know that's a very broad question, but have you thought about it? Do you think that this is going to change the way we do business forever? Or do you think, it's going to go back to the way it was? I ask this in terms of, our students, right? There's concern. They have concern, right? This is a time where, imagine being in school for fashion and, looking into your future, thinking, what's available? How is my career going to look like in industry? So what's your thoughts in terms of how this has changed retail?
I can go.
Yeah.
Before someone else does.
Well, Jen's a graduate, right, from our program, so she, yeah.
I feel like the pandemic's really forced a couple generations who would never have ever gone online. Like my mother buys her groceries online. She would never do that. So it's really forced a learning curve on a lot of people to buy online. And then when they're buying local, for instance, from Loft House Living, we're delivering it to their door. They're getting this face-to-face, small interaction. They're seeing how easy it is to contact us through private or DMs, private messages. They're seeing that online can have a little bit of a personal touch as well. It's not as scary as it used to. So I do feel like online has become, like, I'm not saying it's totally switched or anything, but I think it is a little more approachable to more people. But then on the flip side, I do think that getting out and being able to actually see people and walk in a store and experience a boutique, like Catherine was saying, is it's like a treat now. Like it's exciting to dress up and go out and experience a shop again. So I do think that that's a bit of a novelty as well. So I'm hoping that both of them can really take off again. So yeah.
And work together really well, right? So yeah, okay, great. Tracy and Catherine, do you want to speak to that? You're, given your background, and Catherine's too. She's worked for Roots. She's worked, in retail. Your mic's, you're muted. There you go. Yay!
exactly what
I do it all the time. So
having not grown up with this technology, like it is not intuitive to me at all as being 57 years old.
Yeah.
If I wasn't partnered with somebody that's 26, I think it would be really difficult for me to be still existing in this retail format because it is not intuitive. The flip side of that is I'm amazed at how you can get sucked into that online where there's no stopping and starting of your day. And I think that's really hard for small entrepreneurs, right? Where the phone pings and there's, clients are sort of expecting an immediate response, but it can be at 3 a.m. when they're like scrolling through Instagram. And that creates another thing where it's tricky, whereas a bricks and mortar store, you lock the door, you're leaving it for that 12, 14 hours, and it gives you a chance to refresh. So that I think that's something for entrepreneurs and small businesses. It's probably something that's going to have to be addressed in a way as their future carries on. And maybe some of them have already, decided like, okay, like, we don't respond to messages between these hours. Like, we just don't. I don't know. It's just something I've become like. It's very.
You're aware of it, right? Like,
you're aware of it. And I'm not doing it. I'm just watching it being done all the time. And Catherine feels the pressure to like, no, they've messaged. They want an answer. They want to know what size is there, and immediacy, where it is like if clients walked in the door. As I
10
said,
o'clock on a Sunday night.
Yeah, it's like all the time.
For sure. Yeah. Erica, do you feel the same, or are you?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. You're, and like, even to go back to my first point, it's just the expectation of customers on small businesses. Like sometimes I was like, would you write like a big store like Lululemon or like a big store, a retailer, and ask them the same questions that you're asking me right now? Like, sometimes that personal connection is really, it's valuable for us, but it can be exhausting too, because you're giving a lot of energy. In terms of changing of retail, something that I found worked to our benefit during this pandemic is producing locally. And you've probably seen at a lot of, big stores, inventory during the pandemic was very minimal. So, and then as soon as everything started to open up, you would go to like a place like HomeSense, for example, and the shelves were empty. So I never had that problem because we produce in Toronto. So I'm having a little bit of a delay with our fall winter right now, but that is not because of not having, it's just a backlog basically right now, but I still had inventory to sell. I still have it here to sell. And so that has been a really big benefit to us, that we are producing locally, that we have those really open lines of communication with our production team. And I think that's, we're starting to produce most of our fabric in Toronto as well. So we didn't have to wait for it to be stuck on a ship, and we didn't have to quarantine it for as long, and we didn't have to do all of those things. And I think people started to realize, oh, wow, there is a really big value to having things produced here in our community. So
that's great.
Yeah, I did also say, like, in terms of retail changing, having hand sanitizer in your store and having, holding items off the floor if they've been touched or tried on, like, those are just minimal changes that we're doing, and I can see those staying around for a very long time. And I think that they're just courteous anyways. So I feel like retail will stay that way for a little while, but it's not hindering us in the, it's just another thing to add into our routine rather than, something that we're really looking at as negative.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think some of the practices put in place, I'm like, I actually like this. Like, this could stay on. It's a nice segue into the next thing in terms of, so we talked about how you're feeling about the retail world in general right now, but do you find that in our community that the focus has been more about local since the pandemic? Do you feel like you're getting more support locally because of the pandemic? And Moody, you want to answer this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think times like this, the community is even tighter. and we're all on the same page kind of just, you know, trying to really get our product out there, and everybody knows that this is a struggle for everyone. So if we're all in it together, then like we have to support each other, because that's the only way the community and the economy is ever going to come back, is if we start here together.
Right. And I know like you're a huge advocate of collaborations and partnerships, and I think I admire that with you and your business. I think it's been really, I mean, everybody is, right? Like Jen is too, like there's, but you've really practiced that. And I think in terms of for small businesses, because you get to know each other when you're in the community, right? And build those partnerships and help support each other, right? And so I think that that's like a key factor. Do you think that we're going to see a shift in the consumer behavior in terms of shopping more like locally, you know, boutique online, but locally smaller businesses than mass fast fashion businesses? Who wants to speak to that? Do you think this is something that's going to continue?
Like the supporting local is always going to be a push. The fast fashion, go to the mall, that's always been there. It's always going to be there. But the people who are, you know, coming out with new businesses or working on small businesses, they're going to be the ones who are constantly trying to push that. And I think London is a great place where you find out about these small businesses. So I think it's growing, like supporting local and people finding out these small businesses is growing. And I think it's just going to go up and up and up and up. Where the fast fashion, I'm not sure of like how much bigger they're going to get, because it looks like the malls are kind of looking a lot more emptier.
Yeah.
The mall looks like they're building a mall.
Yeah.
It's like where's all the stores? Are the stores coming in, or are the stores coming out? So like for me, I don't want to go to the mall.
Yeah.
And like that's a large crowd too.
Exactly. Right. So and that's why I asked the question, right? Like this, you know, I mean, I think there's some positive and negatives to this pandemic, right? But if we can look and find a silver lining, I think it's brought more attention to local business. Everybody I know, and like we want to support the local business within our communities or whatever, right? That's really important because, yeah, Jen, speak to that.
I was just going to say, I think that when we did shut down, it really, and you know, I remember ordering something on Amazon Prime. I didn't get it for a couple of weeks. Like you're used to getting it the next day, right? Or something, or stuff like that. So it really forced a lot of people to look around. I think we might have even touched on this already, but look around. What can they get? What can they get their hands on? Because everyone wants something fast, and you know, everything's closed. So I think it forced people to support local. And then I think the natural feeling of supporting local is that you feel good. You supported someone's family. They, you know, they're dropping it off at your house, or you're getting it, you know, couriered over. It's like a natural good feeling to do that versus maybe Amazon. And hopefully they enjoy that feeling and will continue to support it. But yeah, I am curious to see if people will continue doing that or not. So,
Catherine and Tracy, like, I mean, so Catherine and Tracy's shop, for those that don't know, it's in Wortley Village. Come and check it out. And Jen's on Richmond, and Erica, I don't know which locations you're at. We got to tell everybody.
I'm in Oldie's Village on Adelaide. Okay,
perfect. Fantastic. And Moody's online. So, you know, everybody buy their Christmas presents in these places, or Hanukkah, whatever. But Catherine and Tracy, like, I know you've talked about that personal experience shopping together, having people come in. But do you think that, this is going to continue in terms of, you know, the local, supporting local. I know you probably always have, but
I think it will. I think that the fast fashion industry, like when I think of H&M, I think they're going to have a harder recovery than what we think they will. I think that those factories where things are being produced by these massive companies are so hit by the pandemic, by everything, that like some of them are in India and like the poorest communities, and they've been hit so hard by this pandemic too. And to get things being produced and coming out at the rate that people are used to, because it's like, I think there's like, when I think of Zara or H&M, it's like you go there because it's convenient, because it's easy, you can get something fashionable, but the quality doesn't stand up for it. You don't have pieces that you love forever from it. Like, so when you take away that, oh, it's going to be at your house in 3 days, oh, it's going to be super cheap, it's all your sizes are there, whatever, it's not as enticing. It's not as like fun. And so I think that people aren't going to be quite as into it. It doesn't seem that way, at least. I hope that this gives people like a taste of what supporting local is like, the quality that often comes with supporting local. And people kind of start to question. In a sense, it's kind of ripped off this Band-Aid, because I think that we've all been sort of like addicted to, like, I don't know, even for myself, I'll go on Zara app. It's just so easy. And now when you sort of take some of that away, it's like, oh, okay, sort of the hardest part of like ripping that Band-Aid off.
Right.
So I think it will be like a bit of a recovery. And then I think this is really, especially for like sort of a younger generation who's so used to shopping online, like I think it's going to be changing them too, because it's like this fun new experience. I feel like there's so many young people that have come into the store that are like, oh, this is great. And it's sort of this new world of getting to know a shop owner or whoever's working, having that experience. Yeah. And it's kind of like you get a little bit pampered when you come in. You get that personal, someone's interested in you and they want to talk about you. And I think that there's a whole generation that hadn't grown up with that or experienced it. And now they're sort of starting to. And so it's nice to see that, because I feel like there was like sort of this group of people that had experienced shopping local and they were like, oh, I'm not going to go online. Like that's where I don't want to shop at these big stores. I like shopping local. And they sort of have always done that. And now I think it's sort of ripping the Band-Aid off the people who haven't. So
great. Fantastic.
Okay,
great.
I'm just going to add in one point, because, you know, I think that it's forcing big retailers to actually pivot and support local brands as well, because even just, you know, being in the Bay, for example, with a bunch of other Canadian brands, in March, they've actually just launched, I think it's called Made Inland or something. It's a program where they're only, there's a section of the store that is only local. You know, different malls, Yorkdale Mall, in Toronto has always had like a local store, and I forget what it's called, but you know, I was approached by Cadillac Fairview to try to start something like that in Masonville. I don't have the capacity to do it, but flattering, but I don't have the capacity to do it. But there is a desire there for big malls and shopping centers to have stores dedicated to local brands, because they're picking up on this trend, and they're picking up on the need for the desire for people to want to support their local communities. So I think that we'll start seeing more of that trend, you know, big retailers carrying specifically locally made and like brands from their local.
Right. That's, I mean, that would be great, right? I mean, that would be really wonderful. I think we also have to, as Canadians, take care of us. This pandemic has, you know, shown like, the supply chain, right? And how long it takes, to Jen's point, when you're ordering stuff online. And without small businesses, like I couldn't imagine that, right? Like it's the heart of every city, right? To have small local retailers, businesses, restaurants, whatever. So the next, some people had to leave. So if you hear dinging, that's what that is. The next thing I just wanted to touch on, and probably the last thing, I have a lot of questions, but some aren't really relevant in terms of what's going on today. But the students are doing, you know, this online pop-up shop. It's the first time we've done it. And so we're brainstorming and coming up with ideas and what to do. We have clothing, merchandise, right? That has to be photographed and named and descriptions and, should we be doing videos like to include with that experience? So I think, you know, they would love some feedback in terms of, you know, advice from your experiences individually. I mean, this is a pop-up event, so it's going to be up for 2 weeks. And so any advice that you could give to them on that? Jen?
I'll say one thing just because
okay.
it's gonna go back to what Catherine said at the start of this. Have try-on videos and show the clothing on multiple body types.
Fantastic.
How to fit, and give really specific, because people really want to see themselves in the clothing. So I would definitely I always want to do more try-on videos. I always want to have more models showing our stuff, but the capacity of it. So if you guys are prepping for that, that's one big tip I would give is have try-on videos, have multiple different body shapes in the clothing, and try to make people relate to themselves wearing it in that way.
Perfect.
Measurements, all of that.
That's great, because we have the students are actually going to be modeling. So, and we've got, you know, different body shapes, all of that. So thank you, Erica, for that.
Yeah, to kind of go off of that as well, I realize, anyways, I have found that white backdrops, you know, it's good for
Simple.
detailing. And now that I'm thinking of Goodwill pieces, it would be beneficial, I think, to have something super clean so you could see it. However, I have had more success with styling something with, granted it's homeware, but within your home, so within your own style, within
lifestyle sort of.
Yeah, and people can really relate to it and they get a feel for it and they're like,
perfect.
Oh, I like that. So I would have to say, if you can make it as personal or as styled as possible, that would be beneficial.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. This is great, because we talked about white, like seamless paper background, and some lifestyle shots as well. So that's perfect. Thank you. Moody, do you want to add to that? Like the online world, because you're online, right? You're all online now, right? So
how do you like kind of present your product?
Yeah, like any advice for them in terms of maybe what was your, you know, worst experience or things that you find challenging and difficult?
Well, I think like coming up with content. Is like something that you have to play a part. You have to find ways to create content. And for me, that's a challenge, but it's the challenge that I'm okay with. I'm happy for, because I get to branch out. Creating the content, you get to branch out to tie new ideas to new products and deliver that. So
could you give an example of what you mean by that? The students might not understand.
So for me, like the pandemic kind of forced me to kind of like step out of my comfort zone a little bit and kind of show the process of making the candle. So we just did a video a couple weeks ago, and I just got it today, and the video is complete, and it's just me making candles outside in the forest.
Oh.
So
creative, innovative, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
And it's like trying to find, like, you want to be different, right? Like,
yeah.
You need to find ways to kind of like stand out a little bit more, and to like do this whole production video on how candles are made and where it's made. that's the golden content for me, because people haven't seen that, and I know that people want to know. So this is an introduction to me being a little bit more vulnerable, and allowing the consumers and future consumers to see where everything is made and the process of it.
Great, that's fantastic. Does anybody have anything else to add to that question in terms of, you know, students starting up this event, first time, online, all new?
Yeah. I have a couple ideas.
Or for me, actually, too.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, okay, ideas, Jen?
Just when it comes to sales, I think for me, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around why would someone come to a pop-up online? And I feel like you need to have a couple of great, you know, unique things. And so a couple ideas I have is that's been successful for us is we do create a kit. So people will give us a budget. I mean, it's a little different, but we're able to interact and ask a couple questions on what they're looking for. I know this is probably maybe difficult with clothing, but
and accessories. We have clothing, accessories, and yeah, so
or you could offer like gift wrapping or bundling, or you know,
okay,
you buy a little bit more you save or something like that, just to kind of push sales.
Right, okay. And so I mean, it's going to be through social media that the students will promote this event, right? So, you know, and this is the first time to do an online event. I have never done an online event, nor have the students. So I think it's going to be an interesting learning experience for all of us, right? And you haven't done one yet, right, Jen? You haven't done yeah. And I mean, I've visited a few of them. And they're quite interactive. Ours is going to be a pop-up shop online for 2 weeks, right? But I would like to have some engagement or something in there, and we've been discussing it. We talked about like a door prize, you know, virtual door prize, that sort of thing. So we've come up with some ideas. I just wondered if there was any, you know, anything you could add to that in terms of, you know, ideas for that. So create a kit is great, right? Like clothing is hard, but we could do something else around that, right? To entice like customers to come. Yeah, anything else or no ideas? Okay, great. So Jen from Leap Junction, Jennifer, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, hi. So I think it's 10 after 2. So could we, I mean, I've skipped some questions just because it's not really, you know, signage we have. And, you know, in terms of providing tips and tricks to making an incredible pop-up layout and design, I mean, because this is online, right? This is a question that I don't know that can be answered right now because no one's done an online. Moody, have you done an online event yet or no? No. Yeah.
I haven't done any online.
Well, we're going to invite you, all of you, to come and check it out once we've finished it and it's up and running. We'll invite you to come. So I hope you do check it out. But I think, you know, there could be some questions the students might want to ask. And I'm wondering if we could open that up, Jennifer?
Yeah, let's open the floor.
Okay.
If you guys have any questions, you can put them in the chat. I personally have a question that I just wanted to ask as well. Is there any specific social media tools that you guys are using, whether it's promoting your products online or anything like that? Like, is there any tangible, specific tools that you found are really helpful for that?
Like Instagram, right? I think everybody.
Yeah, like on Instagram, you know, they opened up the small business support stickers and different shopping abilities online. So I'm just wondering if any of you have taken advantage of that.
I did my first reel the other day.
Oh, you did?
Which was my employees, like my staff were just like, you have to try one. Anyway, it was interesting, but it was fun and good feedback from customers. So I think that it's just kind of hard to stay on top of all of the changing technology all the time. You kind of find a couple things that stick and you go with it. But trying to stay on top and evolving, I have a staff member that's going to be starting a Pinterest page for us, which is new. We get a lot of people in for family photos. We have adult clothing as well as kids clothing that matches. And she thought, wouldn't it be great? Like when you're looking up family photo ideas, you go on Pinterest potentially. So, what if we did that? So we're trying that out to try to target that kind of family photo idea. And yeah, Instagram has been growing that Instagram, doing giveaways, working with influencers. Those are all things that have really benefited our business. And we just continue to do that.
Okay, great. Jen?
I have started dabbling in live videos, and it's honestly horrific, but like my adrenaline the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, but I have to say where I found it interesting was I wasn't, let's be honest. My husband was following the NBA finals. And I believe there was certain players that were doing Instagram live at the after party or whatever.
Yes.
And it really just included a ton of people, like obviously the world, in their celebrations. So I don't know if your class is completely online or if you guys are getting together to photograph things or whatever, or like doing a final launch of it. If you did an Instagram live, it might be interesting to see.
We are getting together sometimes. So that's great. Thank you. Fantastic. Catherine? Social media, like, I don't know, any advice in terms of that? Because you really promoted on Instagram, right? Like,
I mean, like, we're still pretty small, I find. When I first took over the Instagram, there was like very small, and it was kind of like this grind to sort of, I find now like my lessons through Instagram have been like a lot of interaction and less about numbers and masses. And like before, I thought it was just about like your followers or just about how many likes or whatever, but I find now I'm realizing like the connection and who you're kind of attracting on Instagram. Like you want to hit the right people, because then I find it generates so many sales. I'm at the point now where I'm kind of like, I have a lot of like influencers coming to us. And that's sort of a new world, because it's like, well, like you're in Toronto, so I'm going to give you product to promote on your Instagram, but you're in Toronto and we're so localized. And so it's like navigating that. And it's kind of like, we might get a ton of following from it, but then I find like you also might not, and they might not be the right followers. Like it might just be numbers of people. So it sort of takes like some experimenting, but I find the engagement and like chatting with people, whatever, I kind of hate all that stuff. Like I try, but I get so nervous. Same thing as Jen. Like I literally sit and tremble the whole time. So kind of just like, I don't know, like just being vulnerable, I guess, because I feel so stupid on it. But then it's like, sometimes it like you make a sale and you realize it's all from Instagram. And you're like, well, okay, then I guess I'll do it.
Yeah. You need a local influencer. That's what you need, right? So you need to put that out to the students.
Yeah.
For sure. That's great. And, you know, so did anybody else have anything to add to that? Or I feel like, so social media, like, I mean, our students are pretty savvy as far as that platform with that generation, right? So I'm very grateful for that. So, and everything you've touched on, we sort of talked about. Have any of you worked with TikTok? No. Okay. Just wondered. Jen, you're not doing a TikTok video? You and Jesse? Come on. And the kids? Be fun.
I had TikTok for about 2 weeks.
And no good? Like,
well, like I got it right when the pandemic happened, and I was like, it's like TikTok is like the thing right now, and everyone's on it. Maybe this is a good avenue to reach a certain demographic and test that out. And then I was on it for 2 weeks, and then I realized I need to have a student do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because next thing you know, you're spending a little bit more time on TikTok than you should be.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew I was like, this is not for me. I can't.
Yeah, it's like Tracy's point, right? Like you're spending, like you can get sucked into that.
Yeah.
So finding that balance, right, is true. So I just want to ask the students or anybody in the audience, if you have any questions for any of the panelists.
Debbie, we got questions in the chat here.
Oh, okay. Sorry. What was one?
So the first one, just kind of building off what we were talking about.
Thanks, Kels.
Here that is a question about advertisement strategy for our panelists. Do you guys have different strategies or promotions that you're using on social media for your target market audiences, and what's working and what's not? So since COVID hit, has your advertisement strategies on your social medias been different? And what are you finding maybe from before that's working still and what's not working anymore? Jen, do you want to start for us?
Sure. Why not? I have done a bit of paid advertising, and I have to say I need to educate myself a little more on how to use it properly. I'm signed up for a course, online just to figure out how to make a proper Facebook advertisement, because I've done it a few times and I haven't really seen too much of a result. The best advertising I've had so far, has been through contests where you collaborate with other businesses, where they can win something. You have to follow all the businesses, you have to like the photo, all this stuff. I've gained probably about 10,000 followers over COVID through that.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, but it has to be with the right people. I find, in London, if you're just teaming up with the same crew, which is so comfortable to do, everyone, like it's the easiest thing. You're not necessarily reaching new people. So it's just, a circle. But I did some across Canada collaborations and it was really successful. And now we ship across Canada. So it's been good.
And that was from Sally. That was one of the students. She's on the social media and promotions committee. So she's asking, right? Because we're in the infancy stage of setting that all up. And
so would you guys, to promote your event, would you collaborate? Like, would you do a giveaway to be able to create a content? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, we talked about that. And so collaboration. So we're with, it's our LC, but and Goodwill. So Goodwill Boutique. Are you talking about other people, Jen, to collaborate? Like you, like.
Yeah, like if you send me an email, I'll give you a piece of product and I can advertise your event kind of thing or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. So maybe we'll do that. That sounds great. Yeah. I think we should have you all up there anyway. The businesses are local businesses, right? With a community college, it makes total sense to promote that. So, and introducing all the students today to your businesses that maybe never even knew, right? So that's really good. The other thing, so do we have any other questions? Sorry, I'm trying to watch the chat and.
Yeah, one more in the chat from Rachel.
Okay.
Rachel wanted to know that she was curious, since COVID, have any of our panelists had any supplier issues, like getting your products or your materials that you need? And Erica, I know you kind of mentioned this with the local, which is great. But if any of you have had any supplier issues, first question for all of you, just maybe a hands up, if you have had issues, and if you have, how did you handle them? So give me a thumbs down if you have had any supplier issues from our panelists.
Okay, great. Now I know Catherine, you've had supplier issues, right? Catherine and Tracy?
We have, like some large suppliers, like literally, 1st of September, we're like, oh, we're not delivering a fall line, which is kind of, oh, yay. However, I think that's again where we work to fill the void, sourcing, little bits that are all local, like whether it's Oakville or Kingston or what have you, but finding pieces that create newness in the store all the time. And
Right.
that's one of the things that I think social media has changed a little bit about clothing retail, is that they're all switching to more deliveries because almost being driven by the idea of creating new content.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're constantly looking for a source of new content, and the customer that's on Instagram is much more seen it, what's new, and they want to be fed that all the time, which is a little bit tricky. So you have to be on your game, constantly looking, sourcing, trying to find newness for them. However, I think that change is also going to help with the manufacturing process, because as we pivoted to fast fashion, it was getting harder and harder for people in the garment industry, sourcing buttons, sourcing zippers, sourcing, like, all of those places in Toronto closed.
Right.
Or, so I think that's going to start to have a little bit of a comeback again, whether it's findings, manufacturing, the sewers, etc.
Right.
And a little more flexibility from the suppliers in terms of sizes that they, minimum changes.
Right.
I think there's going to be an improvement in that for people doing local manufacturing, I hope, because it was getting like really hard before.
Yeah.
It was starting to dry up, and I'm hoping that will shift for people.
Okay, great. Erica, did you have something to add? I can see.
So we haven't had any hiccups until most recently. And again, you kind of like, as much as we're trying to make everything as local as possible, there is some basically we had we're making our fleece fabric. Of course, it's winter, we need the fleece. And it's in Toronto, and a machine broke that made our fleece. And our crew neck sweaters have been the most demanded product probably since we sold out of them, a couple months ago. And the time that it took for them to get the part and then create the fleece, and then even just the production time, like, this is not an international factory pumping out, we have, a group of 10 people who work specifically on sewing our garments. So I think that people are realizing the time that it actually takes to make a product. Mm-hmm. And so we have had that delay, which has been frustrating, but I also feel like it's kind of created a little bit more of a demand. People are excited for us to restock that item. So I'm hoping that they sell really well when they eventually get here.
Okay, but great.
Yeah, that's kind of been a little, like, I was supposed to have everything by the end of September, and it'll be probably a 2-month delay at this point.
Wow. So. Okay, great. Okay, we do have another question, I think, from Antonio. So, so she says, thank you for being here. And in terms of showing your product with photographing for online, so she would like some recommendations. That this is all new, right? They're going to be photographing, and Shopify is our platform that we're using. And do you think it's better to keep simple, minimal to catch the eye of the consumer, or is it a good idea to add a pop of color to catch customers' attention? Yeah.
I think every brand is going to be a little bit different, so it depends on your branding, of how you want to create the event. But I do find for our website, we keep everything very minimal on a white background so that people can see the product. I think provide a lot of product shots so that people can see close-ups of the fabric or the detail, and kind of how it fits on someone, I said. But I do think minimal, like on a white background, works best on a website.
Sure.
And consistency. So make sure that all of the products on your website have a very consistent look, because sometimes if it's all jumbled, it can be hard for customer to see the actual product.
Great, thank you. And so we will be in line with livechic.ca too, right? Which is white, like a simple background, very clean. And this is actually beneficial, this discussion, for Janice too. I hope she's on, because she teaches that class. So I guess in if there's no other questions, I think what we're going to do is, yeah, there's no other questions. So I guess I would like you to just, if you can give the students a takeaway of advice, a piece of advice. They're in their last year. Sorry, another question. Are there costs associated with participating in pop-ups? So that's a question. Costs, yep. So Jen, Moody, like the cost to be involved in a pop-up shop?
Yes.
Yes, there are. Right?
Typically, when an event's being hosted, the host isn't necessarily doing it out of the kindness of their heart. They are there to make money, right? So,
yep.
A rental fee of your space, and sometimes I've only seen it a few times, but sometimes you even, if the event is tied to a fundraiser or something like that, a percentage of your sales also goes to that event. And then of course there's, depends how beautiful you want your booth to be. So you have to get linens or signage, or even just maybe you knit something, but they can't just take the mittens home on a rainy day. They're going to need a bag to put it in and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So just that packaging and
right
branding.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And so the first pop-up that we did with Jen, the first pop-up that the students did, we did in Jen's old space. And fortunate that she wanted to partner with us. It was great. But in Goodwill, we're fortunate because they don't charge us for like the venue space, right? So, but generally speaking, there is a cost to be in the pop-up when you're looking at different spaces or festivals or whatever. There's a cost for that. And then like Jen said, and Moody, you could speak to that too, the cost of setting up and buying props or doing whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, with pop-ups, it's kind of, you got to pay to play for the most part, right? So, and then not every pop-up is going to be profit. You're not going to make profit on every pop-up. So that's a game where you got to go do the shows and find out which one worked out the best for you, and continue to do those shows. And buying the props, you're gonna spend money at these shows. And when you're there, you're going to go around and buy some local products at the shows because there's people coming around buying your stuff too. So it's a give and take situation, right? So, but in the end, you build a lot of relationships.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the biggest takeaway.
And I guess, the benefits to doing a pop-up, like I've told my students, in terms of entering into the industry, if this is something that interests them, their own business, or working with another brand, it's obviously less expensive. You're not having to pay rent and overhead and all of that, right? So it's a good starting point for sure in that. And, Moody, you do all, like, pop-ups, what was your jam, right? Yeah. That's what you did. So you've got a lot of knowledge in that. So I guess what would be the worst sort of experience in a pop-up that you've had?
Not being fully prepared, not having the products that I wanted to sell. When you go to these pop-up and shows, you have to have your Square reader, your Shopify payment, and all that stuff. And make sure that stuff is charged. And I think that's one thing, maybe for the students, if you're gonna, one day when these pop-ups and these retail and everything starts booming again, you want to have an online shop by then. So this is an opportunity to, get onto Shopify, get onto Square, build a store. You might not have any product yet, but, just getting, learning about it and getting familiar with designing and putting it together, because you can do that yourself. It's easier than ever right now to open up an online store. So
okay, great.
When you do that now, and then when the time comes to have a pop-up, you can also send people to the online store, because they're going to ask, What's your website? Do you have a store online? You have it.
That's great. Great advice. Thank you so much. Okay, so the last, I guess, because we're getting near the end here. So I would like to just ask, you know, in terms of, Wendy wanted me to ask this question, so I'm asking it in sustainability. So Erica, you do that, right? Like you're working with that. And when we talk about sustainability, I mean, I think it has different definitions to different people. So, you know, so a little feedback about that, and in terms of, do you think that's moved to the forefront of retail?
I think people are more concerned about sustainability of their pieces as well. But obviously the fashion industry is like one of the most wasteful industries. Even just dyeing fabric, like the pollution that it can create. I think more people are aware of that now. It wasn't really, I guess the dark side of the fashion industry wasn't really shown, you know, a while ago. And so that's kind of come up a lot. So if a brand can, I mean, you're still producing garments, you know, there's sometimes overstock of clothing that occurs, but you know, are the pieces that you're creating lasting between, like for me, my biggest thing is this piece going to try to last through a couple of kids here, you know, and like obviously kids are hard on clothes. It doesn't happen all the time, but I get a lot of customer feedback saying, you know, my daughter's been wearing this dress for 4 years and now her sister's onto it. And, you know, we launched 4 years ago. So that's really amazing feedback. So I think product quality is really important, as well as, you know, who are you paying to make the clothing? And something that's become really important is where is the fabric being sourced and who's creating the fabric. So there's certain fabric that you can buy that has certifications. It's called, you probably talk about this in your class, but it's you know, a sustainability certification, so that you know you're paying a fair wage, that they take precaution when, and you know, try to be the least wasteful that they can be when producing the fabric. And yeah, like all of those things are really important. Bamboo specifically is a great fabric to work with because of the regeneration time. So it doesn't take long to grow bamboo and harvest it, and it's not very detrimental. So that's something that I've learned since, you know, opening the store, and why I have used a product like bamboo. But yeah, I think that people are really having those questions and wondering where their clothes are made and what they're made out of. And then of course, like allergies to polyester have started happening a lot. And I have parents come in with kids that can only buy our clothes because of that. So yeah, I think that people are just kind of paying attention now. And yeah, it's going to be something, you see big brands doing it now. They're trying to say, oh, this is a sustainable line, or this is this is a bamboo line. And so they're picking up on what people are kind of concerned about.
You're muted, Debbie.
Sorry. Yeah. Anyways, Tracy, did you want to touch on that? Because I know you talked about it in the beginning. And you're muted. I know. Sorry. Yeah. I know.
We are seeing more brands, and it's been really interesting that they are pivoting. I still find most consumers, although they are interested, it's still how the garment works on them is the driving force. So still, like that, the fashion is going to outweigh the sustainability of a product. Like people, like the visual, the feel, the touch, how it fits is going to be more critical. I'm always telling clients that I always think the most sustainable product is product that you wear a long time, the more often you wear it. So that sort of speaks to finding pieces that really work for you and that fit into your fashion sensibility that you can carry on and turn to over and over and over again. And also maybe speaks to that sometimes that better quality fabric has that lasting work to it. And when you've invested in the piece, then you're more likely to maybe invest in alterations, maybe invest in altering the garment because you had spent a lot of money on it. And that creates that slow fashion, as opposed to the buttons falling off, so into the, you know, pile it goes.
Yeah.
And I'm out
To
buy
Goodwill or to wherever, right? Yeah.
that's like not sustainable, right? Like that's,
Yeah.
I do find that I think part of the local movement is that there's a little bit of guilt on
Oh, just cutting out a little bit.
people's parts when they are consuming.
Trace, you're cutting out, so.
So
Okay.
they can come in and purchase locally, that offsets some of that still being a consumer. Like consume.
I just muted her just so that that's stopped cutting out. But Tracy, if you come back, you're frozen as well, but kind of give us a wave and then maybe we can see once you've caught up with the camera.
Okay,
in the meantime, while we're waiting for Tracy's internet to bounce back, I just wanted to...
Oh, there she is. She's still talking. You can unmute.
To Johnson's point earlier about making sure that everybody is getting online, if you are operating home-based businesses right now and you are interested in getting your website started, there is a project right now called Digital Main Street that helps home-based businesses without websites get started. So for some of the students that are on here today that are maybe toying with a home-based business, consider looking at this program. You can get some funding and some assistance to help make that website so you are ready, just like Johnson.
Yeah.
Tracy, are you back?
Are you there, Trace? Oh, she's muted. Did you mute her? Can you unmute her?
There.
Oh, yep.
Hi, yeah, you're back. You were cut out.
Okay, sorry. And I forget where I was, so it's all good.
Well, you were just basically saying, like, in terms of shopping locally, spending the money, making an investment, right? So I agree. You're more apt to care for the garment better and do alterations and, you know, even maybe, you know, alter the garment to something new, right? So great points. Moody, did you have anything to add for sustainability in terms of your candle? You want to talk about what they're made of?
Yeah, so we recycle our tins. So we work, a partnership with Purdy. People return back their tins to the store, and they'll receive a free candle. And this is my way of kind of reducing the waste of the tins, but also bringing customers back into the store, because not only will they get a free candle, but they're going to be in there shopping.
Mm-hmm. But the product that you use to make your candles too, right?
Yeah, it's soy wax.
Soy, yeah.
So that's a sustainable source of
soy,
wax.
Yep, which is great.
Yeah, that's the only way to go.
Yeah, it is. Because they burn really nice. They last longer, actually.
They burn longer.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Jen, do you have anything to add to that in terms of sustainability? Like, so sustainability, you know, like, I mean, because when we do this project with Goodwill, you know, it's cross-cycling. It's just taking longer to get to the where we all know it's going to go.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple things.
Sure.
Come to mind with homeware. So we have on our website, we have a found section. So it allows me to keep up my hobby of thrifting and antiquing and all that stuff and be able to sell it.
Yeah.
And so we just make sure people know, like, yes, there's a markup to it, but we had to go out and find it. We've cleaned it up. We've maybe repainted it or whatever. So anyways, but so that's interesting because those pieces fly off the shelf. But I do have to say, sustainability isn't necessarily the number one thing we look at when we bring in brands to the store, to be completely honest. Okay. But when we do have a gem that is sustainable, it's super important that we educate the customer on this, because typically I find when things are sustainable or, you know, really, you know, everyone's getting paid properly and, you know, it's a really beautiful product, it needs that explanation because the price point of it is usually quite a bit higher than something that's made in China or, you know, just an easier grab. So
Sure.
I do find that it's hard. It's a bit of a challenge to me to get people to value sustainability due to the price point in homeware.
I agree. I agree. You know, educating them on that, right? Because it generally does cost more.
Yeah.
You know, so there's the economy effect of sustainability, the society effect, and then the environmental effect, right? And so I think when you're in business, it's obviously hard to reach all three of those pillars, right? And still maintain sales and do all of that, right? Because obviously it's going to cost more.
Yeah. Just an example of what we have done is we teamed up with a factory in Sweden to make Swedish dishcloths. I don't know if you're familiar with these.
Yeah, yeah.
They replace paper towels in your kitchen. They're great. I think actually Live Chic has some of ours. So my sister and I designed them. They printed them. We had to buy a ton of them, obviously, because we're cutting out the middleman and we made them ourselves. And so, you know, they can sit on your shelf and just look like these pieces of cardboard, or you can really sell them. And anytime we opened up and told people about them, it was an instant sale. So
yeah. Okay.
Educating part.
Right. Interesting. Okay. So the last in closing, you know, question I would like to ask is there, what advice, okay, think about when you were 19, 20, right? You're finishing school, you're in your last year, right? Put yourself in the students right now position. You're in a pandemic. The world is a bit warped. Time is warped. Everything feels a bit different. What advice could you give to them, right? As entrepreneurs, business owners, business people, you know, in terms of takeaways or a piece of advice for their careers. You know, there's definitely opportunity out there. The opportunity has changed a bit in terms of what that might look like because we have shifted so much to the online world, right? Social media is huge. It was before, but now it's huge. They're hiring people to do that, right? Full-time jobs. So what advice do you have to give my peeps?
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Do you want to go, Tracy? No? Okay. I guess one thing, it's going to sound really negative to start, but basically everything to me feels like it's already been done. Like, I don't know. I started off and I'm like, wow, I don't know what I can offer this world in, you know, retail. And then it's really like, for instance, I feel like you could probably find everything, a lot of the things we sell at Indigo. So how are you making yourself different? So I would say, and then to narrow that down, I know not everyone has a store or products to sell right now coming out of college, but it's just how do you spin yourself in a unique way that's super authentic. I hate that word, but authentic to you. And how are you special because you are you, and, you know, try not to be someone else, just totally be yourself. And I think that's the winning brand you can put out there for resumes, for content on social media, for businesses. Anyways, I feel like that's like your mom talking to you, but you gotta be you. I think you're muted, Deb.
I think that's valuable though, because, you know, it's not their mom talking to them, it's you. And so I feel like that, you know, is something that they will take away and think about for sure. Like I really do. Tracy and Catherine, did you have something?
Do you want to go first?
Advice.
Sure. I was going to say that I think for young people coming out, they have to look at everything they're doing as an opportunity to learn. And sometimes even when it's a negative situation, it's like, if you put into the perspective of, if I was in this position of having more power here, how would I change it? What would I do differently? And you file it back in the bank, because those learning experiences will come back to you. And it might not seem like it at the time, but they will. And so give yourself a break, file it in the back there, and remember those lessons, because every exchange that you're having is an opportunity to learn something. And
like today
Yeah.
is a great opportunity for them, right? It really is, for sure. Eric,
I think
yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, like, even when you look at where you are in life in this moment, it's like, don't get too hard on yourself. Don't get too down on yourself. Like, things work out, things happen, and you kind of can't see into the future. And it's like sort of sticking with your gut and trusting yourself. And not every season and stage is great. Sometimes it sucks. But like, I was literally a PSW this time last year, so I was literally like wiping bums all day. And then it's like, I kind of was like ready to take a chance on myself. And then when you do, it's like this path unfolds, but it takes a little bit of like risk, confidence in yourself, and then just going for it and taking the jump. So I think that, like, don't get too discouraged when you're in the moment. Keep that end goal in mind and just like go with the flow a little bit, as lame as that is.
No, that's actually great advice, because you got to do what you got to do sometimes to get to where you want to go, right? It doesn't, you're not going to come out doing exactly what you want, as all of you know, and I know there's steps, right? And yeah, so that makes absolute sense. Moody, you advice for the students? You're muted.
My turn. I guess like thinking back, like if I was like 19, I think the fear of starting something and the fear of failing, that kind of holds, that would hold me back. But no one's gonna remember your failures, so just go out and try it and do it. Because if you succeed, then you'll move up to the next step.
That's right.
And if you fail, then you learn how to work around that, how to move to the next step, and you'll figure it out. You have to figure it out, and stop comparing yourself to others. Just you're your own person. Like, oh, but it's been done before, but it hasn't been done by you, right? So think about that, and I think you'll start something, and then from there, it'll be your greatest little treasure, and that's important to have.
That's great advice. Great advice. Thank you so much. Erica?
I think to just add on that, when I started my business, there's a lot of obviously competition in this kind of field, and I would look at the competition in a really negative kind of viewpoint, and I would get overly competitive. And when you think about social media, I'm like, oh, well, that brand has more followers than me, and maybe they have a better product, or it really kind of creates a self-doubt in yourself when you have these negative mindsets all the time, or you have these really competitive. I used to play a lot of sports, so like I was really competitive, and I had to really change my mindset when I started a business, because being collaborative works way better than being overly competitive. You create connections, you create friends, and that will only build your business. So instead of looking at things as competition all the time, really try to see, how can I work with this brand, or how can we work together to create something, or like really kind of get out of that I have to be better mindset all the time, or I'm not good enough mindset, because that really can put you in a negative spot. And as an entrepreneur, it can get, and you probably hear this all the time, it can get really lonely, because you really feel like it's all, I've luckily had a business partner in this, but you're like, it feels like everything is on you all the time. And to have a community of other entrepreneurs and, collaborations to kind of fall back on and hold you up and like, just, talk about all of the struggles that you have. Sometimes that's the most important thing when trying to get out of that like negative mindset. You really have to focus on being positive and collaborative and being a part of the community. I think that that's really important.
Great. Fantastic. Okay. Well, I think if there's no more questions from my students, I think we're going to probably wrap this up, right, Jennifer? I feel like, and I just want to thank everybody for coming, Jen, Erica, Catherine, Tracy, Moody, thank you so, so much. And I think, Jen, when you said being your authentic self, like all of you are your authentic selves and you've been successful in this. So I know it's kind of cliche, but it's like, it's true, right? It's absolutely true. And Moody's saying, you know, you haven't done this, you know, it might be done, but not by you. And that's a strong, strong takeaway for them because, you know, not everybody's the same and you're going to do something different. And it could just be that one little recipe that you do differently that makes you successful, right? So I appreciate that so much. And thank you for taking time out of your busy day. And we'll make sure that you get invited to our pop-up online store event. And I noticed that Jennifer had all your information listed for the students. So that's fantastic. And I'll post that on our website too. And yeah, that's it. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And everybody shop local. All the students go shop local, visit the stores, and yeah, and that's it. So thank you so much. Did you have something to say?
I just wanted to close it off by just saying if any of you are interested in pursuing your entrepreneurial journey further, you can check out leapjunction.ca. I'm going to put it in the chat, and we can help you do that as well.
Yeah.
But thank you again, everyone, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I'll come see you. Come shop.